Welcome back to the Chasing Happiness podcast, an honest podcast about finding happiness, what it really means, and the process of getting there. My name is Crystal, and this morning I am joined by a wonderful guest who I am so excited to have a conversation with because I think you guys listening to this podcast are going to get so much out of this. Good morning, Dunia. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Crystal. How are you?
I am wonderful and I am so excited to be sitting down and chat with you. But before we get into the details of why I want to chat with you, do you want to just explain to people who may not be familiar with you, who you are and sort of what you do?
Totally. Oh my God, absolutely. So my name is Dunia Darwiche, and I'm a transformational intuitive coach. I'm also an energetic therapist. So I do past life regression therapy. I'm a Reiki practitioner, actually also a designer. So I design handmade silk scarves, and they're super, super beautiful. So that's a little bit about what I do.
That's
Um,
just a little bit, she says. So let's be realistic. That's a little bit because she is a very busy woman and does 9 million things. But let me tell you, the scarves are amazingly beautiful, and people listening to this podcast will not be surprised that I met you on Clubhouse because I've been talking about Clubhouse for like ever now. But we met on Clubhouse. And when I first met you, I didn't even know you did the scarves. It was because I started following you on Instagram and I saw you post something about the scarves. And your scarves are actually a pretty big deal. So let's start with, how did you get involved in that?
Oh, wow. That goes back a long time. So I was actually working at a private art school. So I was a fine arts teacher and art therapist for a decade. And pre being a fine arts teacher, what happened is I was actually a student for a decade. And basically at this private art school, I would learn how to paint on all kinds of different mediums, glass, watercolor paper, all of this kind of stuff. And one of our mediums was silk. And we got to paint on silk. And I was like, fascinated. I was like, first of all, I've loved fashion since I'm a little kid. My mom was in the corporate fashion industry when I was young.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, I can paint on fabric. And I was mind blown. So I had to do it. I really had to dive in and start trying it out. Instead of doing paintings, I started doing like scarves and all kinds of stuff with designs. And oh, I love it. And there's something very soothing about painting on silk. So as your paintbrush touches the fabric, it just spreads right through. So it has this extremely calming feature.
I love that. And your scarves are beautiful. So for the people listening, if they want to see it and they want to figure out how they can purchase it, because you are a fellow Canadian, so a number of people who are listening to this are also Canadian, how can people find you to be able to see them and purchase them?
So the best thing would be on Instagram. You can go check me out at Dunia_Darwiche, Dunia_Darwiche, Darwiche. And I have some of my older scarves on there, but there's going to be a full collection that I drop soon. I'm getting rid of the old inventory to make space for the new. So yeah, you can DM me. I can send you photos and all of that stuff and give you the price details.
Woohoo. Okay. So I will put links to your social media in the show notes for the episode so that people can find you as well in case they have any problems, technology being what it is. So let's talk about, because you do so many amazing things. And I think one of the first things that I saw you do was do an Instagram live once we had connected through Clubhouse about how you had sort of had this moment of discovery and you were going to start to change your life and sort of get more into your spiritual side. So how did you, this kind of big picture question, but like, how did you get there and how did you make that decision? Because I think a lot of people listening to this podcast tend to be looking for a life change and they don't know even where to start.
Oh my God. You have to start with you. It sounds crazy, but your calling will knock at your door until you answer.
I love that.
It's just like, you can't deny it at one point. When I was young, I had spiritual gifts. I've always had them. They were part of who I was, and I couldn't brush them off and shake them off. And my mom was really understanding of them. She had spiritual gifts of her own, which I didn't realize to what extent until after her passing. And that was a whole experience in itself. So I'd have these spiritual gifts. I'd have all these moments like memories from past lives, predictions. After my mom's passing, I'd have multiple times predicting death, like ridiculous. It was crazy. It's like I just knew and I couldn't explain how I knew. And I kept having to follow my gut. So basically, I would go see psychics because I was like, there's no one in my life that understands what I'm going through. My
Sure.
dad was an industrial engineer. If you couldn't calculate it on a spreadsheet with algorithms and all kinds of things like that,
Right.
he's like, it doesn't make sense. So I kept seeing intuitives, and multiple times I was told, you could do my work for a living. And I'm like, you're crazy. Like, there's no way, unless you want to call my father and let him know. That would be great,
Right.
So basically, I brushed it off for so long. And in 2019, I decided was it 2000? Yeah, 2019, I decided to get certified as a coach because it was the closest thing I could do to helping people in this lifetime that wasn't trying to put on a diagnosis or look at their past. And it was
Sure.
so beautiful, so future oriented, so malleable as a practice. And I really loved it. So here I was doing coaching, and on the side, I'd get situations where I would be predicting things. Family and friends would call me for readings. I had family and friends call me to remove spirits from homes, and it literally, I could do it with my eyes closed. And I was like, okay. So in January of 2021, in December of 2020, I had a situation where I was like, it was literally written on my forehead. Like, when are you going to start tapping in? When are you going to publicly explain what you do for real? And I was like, okay, I got you. I hear you. So in January, I said in 2021, I came out of my psychic closet and I was like, hey, I do this work. I've been doing this work since I'm a child. Now I'm going to do it publicly and mix my private practice with it. So that's why I called it transformational intuitive coaching, because I allow people to tap into their own gifts. We all have them. Like, I was not born with them to be special. Everybody has them. It's just a muscle. I just chose to strengthen my muscle throughout my life.
Right.
So it kind of like, it allowed me to do this publicly, and allowed me to help people to find their own way of using their gifts. And you don't have to do what I do for a living to tap in. You can be good with your gut feelings. You can be better with your boundaries, following your path. All of these little things add up and then basically allow you to tap into your own gifts.
That's huge. And I have a couple of questions because being someone who has made some pretty big life changes myself, it can be pretty terrifying to like publicly take a step and say, like, this is what I'm going to now live. Because a lot of people, as you were saying, around you don't necessarily understand it in the moment. So, how scary was that in January for you?
I freaked out. I wrote the post and I was freaking out. So basically, the problem is everyone in our past life, and I'm saying past life of people who have been in your life for, let's just say, numerous years and even numerous
Sure.
months, basically have an attachment to who you were. That's the person that they know best.
Right.
And when you start to change, they start to get slightly triggered because they're thinking, oh my God, what's happening? If they're changing, does that require me to change? I'm not ready to change.
Right.
So automatically they start to react in certain ways. They may be resistant. They may be arguing. They may be questioning the dream, questioning the changes.
Right.
I know a lot of people that are listening are relating right now. So basically, there's so many people that are attached to who you are, but honoring that there are some people that can see through that insecurity and believe in you so much that they're like, you know what? I may react a little bit differently, but I believe in you and I trust the change and everything that's coming. So honoring that those people, there are some of those pillars in your life that are still going to be found, even though they may not be as visible as your family and your really, really close friends. And honoring that when you step into this beautiful change, you're stepping into a brand new tribe. To think that Clubhouse came into my life probably a month after, or not even, that's insane.
Right.
I was like, what? And Clubhouse has brought a whole soul family back together. So many of us feel like we've known each other in a million lives. And it's we're literally just coming back together. It feels like family. It feels like I've told people more things on Clubhouse than I have in my personal life.
Yes.
And so allowing, just allowing that thought and allowing that possibility in your mind where when you step into your power and what you're actually meant to do, you're actually going to be surrounded by people that truly enjoy, respect, see, love you to the umpteenth degree.
Right. And it's such a big thing because, as you said, you sort of have this moment, and then something like Clubhouse comes along and gives you this whole tribe of people, which I have had a hard time explaining to people who aren't on Clubhouse, because
Oh,
unless you
yeah.
experience it, you can't really understand it. It's just one of those things that you like, as you're describing it, it's kind of like talk radio, but not like talk radio. And
Oh
it's
my
kind of like picking up the
God.
phone and calling someone, but not really picking. And it's like all of these things mixed into one. So, for people listening, can you explain, if you can,
Of course.
how Clubhouse has given you that family? Because being a part of that intentional connector community with you, I know what it's done for me. And I've talked about that on previous podcasts. But for you, what has that given you, especially in the midst of all of this change for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, Clubhouse, for those that are listening and don't really understand it, I would say simulates like a dinner conversation. There are some
Yes.
people sitting at the table. They're the hosts of the dinner. They're kind of controlling like when the food's coming in, who's talking about what. They're kind of seeing where the conversation's going. And there's people that are sitting in the living room that are all around this table. So, like, kind of like this is the best way to describe it, where it's like it gives you an insight on a dinner conversation. You can either pull up a chair and get in, or you could sit and watch and listen. And I think that's the best way to describe it to start. And so I think that I have this little clubhouse theory called the Dunia Darwiche clubhouse theory. And so I think truly that we get to connect deeply through Clubhouse because it's really just audio. We as humans can feel in our hearts if we're going to connect with someone through their voice.
Right.
We know it. We like feel it. When someone has good intentions, you can feel it. When someone has like questionable intentions, you can feel it. It's like
Sure.
the vibration of voice just like transcends a lot of our, I think, like prejudice and filters and
Yes.
stuff like that. It just goes right through all of that. So you can feel someone's energy through their vibrations, which comes out through their voice. And now that we've removed the visual, it's like you really can just focus on that voice. And so one of the things that I think is we've been so programmed to see marketing on a visual level and like kind of like the manipulation of images and what we see, that I truly feel that energetically we've put a filter. We've put a filter for ourselves because we don't truly believe anymore everything that we see. So
Right.
videos, the Instagram posts and everything, I feel like we believe some of it, but there's part of us that doesn't trust anymore. The voice though, people haven't really tapped into that on a marketing standpoint. Yeah, a little bit with ads, but not at this level,
Sure.
So I feel like Clubhouse kind of transcends all of that and allows us to really connect deeply on a one-to-one. So what's been amazing is also removing the visual. You're not as nervous. That's a lie. You're totally nervous. The first times I got on Clubhouse, I was like shaking and I was like, I'm good at speaking. I'm like, I
Right.
don't know what's going on. But, I could be sitting in my pajamas and having a Clubhouse call and it's amazing. We're sitting in the bathtub as long as the phone doesn't fall in,
Right.
we're good. So it like allowed me a space where I could just focus on the message that I was sharing and either the content I was providing or the questions that I was having in that very moment with that audience. What was amazing is as I am diving through this change and being very public about my work, it allowed me like a cocoon space to be able to share it before I share it with the actual world. And what's amazing is I find that not a lot of people, and I know, Crystal, you touched on this, like you feel like a lot of people around you don't really get it. Like when that
Right.
change comes or who you are really. And I feel like my tribe was always on the international. There were people hiding around the world that I would really
Sure.
connect with deeply. And so when I got to share this with our Clubhouse tribe, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm heard, I'm understood, I'm seen, I'm loved. And I'm like, okay, like this is how I was meant to kind of like birth this through and introduce this to the world.
I love that. First of all, I love how you explain Clubhouse because you're 100% right. I have struggled to explain to people like it's kind of like sitting in a coffee shop with friends, but then like people from all around the world show up and people like don't understand the concept. So you're 100% right. It's like those dinner conversations, like old salon conversations that,
Yes,
from way back where people would just talk about everything because literally there is a Clubhouse room for anything you can imagine. So
literally.
it is literally that. And I think you are you're 100% right when you talk about how global this is. We, especially in the intentional connector community, we have so many people who get up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. just to take part in our intention room in the morning to check in. And it's mind boggling because I think we as a society, especially after this last year, we as a world have been longing for a way to connect with people because with technology now, we are so disconnected spiritually from each other.
Yeah, big time. It makes us also realize time and space doesn't exist truly.
Yes.
Like in terms of time for time zones in this particular case, and space is like, we could be like, look at us, Crystal, like, yes, we're in the same country, but we're so apart and we've grown to have such a beautiful bond.
Yeah.
And here we are now connecting and working together and doing a little project. And like, this wouldn't have been possible in a global pandemic had it not been for Clubhouse.
100%. Because even though you are in my country, and quite frankly, I could drive to see you, we can't drive to see each other. It's not something that's happening right now. And what are the odds without Clubhouse that our paths would have crossed because of that, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So like, I almost have this, like this whole thing was destined to be because the number of people who I have connected with, who I have gotten to know, who I have been able to learn from, the learning is just mind boggling.
Oh yeah. It's brilliant. I find it levels out the playing field for everyone.
Yes.
Everyone has access to the rooms. Now they have the clubs and some of the rooms are closed. Okay. But in general, every single person, whether you're a CEO or a janitor, you can enter the same room. You can ask the same questions. You can take the same notes. You can have access to the same people. And I'm like, whoa, now we're talking.
Exactly. It feels so much more inclusive than other forms of, I don't even feel comfortable like calling it like a social network kind of thing. Yeah. Because to me, it's just the catalyst that has given us the ability to connect. It just, that's all it is for me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a huge catalyst. I feel like my life literally changed. And I mean changed, like completely shifted after Clubhouse. It was like, and I keep saying it, it's that thing that we've all been asking for so long. I want to connect with like-minded people that are different from me, that I love and that love me, and that I connect with, that I can share my life with, that I can collaborate with, that think a big vision, that it's hard to describe.
And I feel like it came at the perfect time. So I know sort of most of the people who we've connected with have joined Clubhouse at different times throughout this process. But I feel like especially after, 6 to 9 months of COVID, depending on where you lived in the world, we so needed something like this. And then it came along and it was like, not only do you feel love, but you give love. And there's this huge amount of respect for each other. Granted, like any other space, there's some places that are not so great to go within Clubhouse. But for the most part, you are in control, which is one of the things that I love about this platform, because you get to decide what rooms you walk into. It's not Facebook posting a bunch of stuff to your newsfeed, right? So you as a human being are back in control of what your experience is going to be.
Oh, that is so good, Crystal. Absolutely. And it puts your personal power back in your hands.
Yes. And it's huge. It's huge. Okay. So we'll stop talking about Clubhouse. Probably not, because people who have been listening to this podcast since the beginning of the year know it comes up quite regularly for me. In the beginning, I was spending probably a good 15 hours a day on Clubhouse because I was so obsessed with just getting involved and learning and the access that you have to people who you never otherwise would have had access to. It was just moving on from Clubhouse temporarily, because I don't want to say permanently, because I'm sure we will get back to Clubhouse talk. How over the last year, because I know you're in Quebec and I'm in Ontario, and things have been drastically different between the two provinces and across the whole country and around the world. So how have you coped, just generally or in depth, over the last year with everything that has changed?
Oh, get yourself a quarantine buddy, whatever that means. Okay. That's and I'm not joking. That was so freaking important for me. My best friend lives literally down the street. he's literally my best friend. And we thank God and there were nights where when we had to do curfew, I would sleep on his couch. And I was like, I just need to do drinks on a Thursday night and feel like the
Sure.
world is still normal for
Right.
5 minutes. Yeah. And I was like, and I know what your needs are. You know what? The world's going to have requirements of you. And unfortunately, sometimes your needs are going to be different than those requirements. And know when it's time to follow à la lettre, as we say in French, the rules and regulations, and know when you need something different. There was one night where I was at my dad's place and it was an hour and a half past curfew. And he was like, you're going to be late. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this is my mental health and I need to be here right now with
Right.
my family, with my dad. I'm like, if the cops stop me, so be it. Like we've been doing this for a year and some now. I'm like, so it's tough though. It's tough because you feel like you're like, oh, I don't want to be rebellious in that way. And you have to listen to yourself. That's the most important. I'm not saying go crazy and go bending
Sure.
over it is, but that's definitely one thing. Do things that light you up. You have to. That's like that mental health. Connect with things like means painting, drawing, clubhouse, reading, hanging out with friends, exercising, running by the canal, all of these things. So doing things that light you up, because we're going through, no matter how well you're taking this is an unprecedented time. And
Absolutely.
it's going to require us to really take some steps necessary to make sure that mind, soul, and body are doing well. So make sure that you come first. It's so easy to give during a time like now. Just make sure you're giving from a full cup, from the overflow of your full cup. Because if you're giving from your cup, it gets empty quite quickly in a time like now.
Sure. And that's huge. And I think knowing what your needs are is where it all starts, as you said, because I think in the beginning of all of this, especially here in Canada, I can't speak to necessarily around the world, but here in Canada, it was like, how can we help our neighbors? What can we do to make sure that everyone around us is okay? And nobody in the beginning really focused much on what am I going to need to survive this long term? And now I think we're all sitting in a collective trauma. We've had enough. We are
Oh
so
my
sick and
God, yeah.
tired of all of this. And I think personally, based on my opinion and my education, we're going to spend 2 or 3 years coming out of the collective trauma,
Oh
figuring
yeah.
out what life looks like, how to navigate life with people, because there are people who have just had enough and don't care about the rules anymore. There are people who are sort of in between and they're like, I care about the rules, but for my mental health, these are the things that I need. And then there are people who are so terrified to even open their front door that they're not sure they can go back to life. So I think it's going to take us a long time to get to whatever life looks like after all of this.
Absolutely. And I cannot imagine what it is to be a child during this time.
Oh, yes.
That's one of the biggest things I keep thinking. I'm like, oof, therapists, psychologists, anyone who's in the helping industry is going to have a freaking field day for the next decade.
Yeah.
Because the effects of this are going to be massive. And I pray to every little star there is that services come in for specifically this, to be able to undo this, re-socialize the kids like properly, like bringing
Right.
out this, more of a trust in life, a trust in their own immune system, a trust, these things aren't going to happen all the time, like war-torn countries, we're hoping it's not for life. Well,
Right.
this felt like a war, Crystal. I remember writing in my journal probably think we were like in the first month. And I was journaling and I was writing. I was like, it feels like we're going through a war, yet I open my blinds and there's nothing. And I
Right.
was like, I grew up with a father who lived through civil war. I'm like a little bit confused. It's like your mind and your body don't know what to do. It's
Right.
like, how do you react? Like, you're like, okay. So you're like, am I supposed to be afraid of the air outside or am I supposed to be afraid of something else? Like, I'm not sure here. That was definitely a process getting used to that.
Well, and I think you're right. Like, I think there is a mental struggle, especially with this. And now that we're so far into this, because you cannot see the threat. You as a human being are genetically coded to see threats coming and react. And you cannot see this. You can see the fallout. You can see everything that's happening because of it, but you cannot see the threat itself. And the threat could be coming from the person you love the most. And I think that's the thing that is messing with people's minds at this point.
Yeah, it is creating a lot of paranoia, big time.
Yeah,
It's a different version of paranoia, but
sure.
totally. And it's people are having their trust in life really tested.
Yes.
Can I just trust life? Can I trust that I'm going to be okay? Can I trust I'm going to be healthy? Can I trust that whatever's meant to happen is meant to happen regardless?
Right.
Can I trust that, like, oh yeah, it's an exercise. It's, and do everything you can to take care of your mind, take care of your body, take care of your soul right now.
Absolutely. And I think if there's any lesson we've gotten out of the last 16 months or however long it's been now, I think that's the lesson. You have to take care of you in order to take care of other people. And if you're
Yes.
someone like us who strives and lives to help others, you cannot do that if you're not also taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it, right? Because you can't leave one bucket empty and hope the other two will fill it. It doesn't work that way.
Oh my God, that was good. Absolutely, Crystal. Yeah, yeah. And they're not going to fill on their own. That's your responsibility. And it's tough, but as an adult, and they don't teach you this. It's like you are responsible to fill you're not taught this. You just have to figure it out. You have to fill your own buckets, and the way you fill your buckets may be very different than the way your neighbor does.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that I wish we taught kids in school, because I was in my late 20s, early 30s before I even learned that I had a bucket. And it drives me crazy because nobody around me had a bucket, right? Like they did, but they were completely empty. So nobody ever talked about it, right? Like I had no concept of what that is. I was blessed in my life to come across someone who said, hey, just in case you didn't know, this is what self-care is. And I went, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't understand this concept, right? And I wish we were teaching kids. I wish that the world was full of people like my best friend who is teaching her 3-year-old that it's okay to have feelings. And when you have feelings, you manage them. You manage them by doing different things to be able to cope. And then you talk about those feelings. Oh my God, you talk about feelings. I mentioned this back to Clubhouse. I mentioned this in a Clubhouse room a couple of days ago. Like, in my family growing up, and still to this day, we don't talk about feelings. That's not something you do. And so if you grow up in a situation like that, where you don't have anyone you can have those conversations with, you are responsible as an adult because you know you need that to go out and find it somewhere else. And we need to be teaching people that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Having those difficult conversations. It's so important, like talking about these things. Like there are so many things we don't talk about, and we realize this year, like, wait a minute, we need to talk about these things. And I find that what's been brilliant is we need to be talking about death. Like, hello, that was a big hit for the world. That was a topic that was like left and right. And I'm like, finally, we're talking about this conversation that everyone was trying to avoid for the last how many centuries. It was crazy and it was amazing, but it was like also like, it's brought up so much. This, like you said, the self-care, the mental health, the what can I do for myself? What do I need right now?
Huge. And since we're talking about death, let's have a conversation a little bit about that, because there are two things that every human being on the face of this planet is going to go through. You're going to be born and you're going to die. Everything in between can vary, but those two things no one is able to avoid, right? And you're 100% right. People weren't talking about it, especially in this country. I think in North America more so than anywhere else, because there are countries around the world where, this is something people discussed or they have celebrations around. But here, until you had the experience of being able to mourn taken away from you, people didn't even bother to talk about death. And it's such an important thing for us all to be able to move forward in life.
Absolutely. Oh my God. So I think a big thing is we've been marketed this dream of stay young forever.
Mm-hmm.
Don't grow old.
Right.
It's not sexy to grow old. It's not appealing. You're going to be the last one of the pack that's going to be left behind if you grow old.
Right.
We've also now we don't spend as much time intergenerationally. Like we don't spend time with often see grandchildren and grandparents in the same space.
Right.
While before, that's all we used to see. We used to learn our stories from our grandparents.
Yes.
And it was so powerful. It was like you didn't want to go home. You wanted to hear more stories.
Right.
So things have changed so quickly. And now we've been kind of marketed this idea that like, oh, death is a bad thing. We need to stay away from death at all cost. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. If death isn't going anywhere, like in the sense where it's going to happen regardless,
Right.
we might as well start getting used to the concept of it coming because it's coming.
Right.
And why be so afraid of something that's coming regardless? That's really, I mean, everyone can believe whatever they want. I mean, as a past life regression therapist, you guys probably can imagine what I believe in, which is totally fine. I have friends that don't believe in afterlife and reincarnation. And I'm like, that's all good. Like,
Sure.
believe in whatever works for you.
Right.
Yet it is some kind of transition. It's a transition either to something else or to in the ground or to whatever you want to believe. That transition, though, is something very, very sacred. That transition can come with a lot of mourning, a lot of celebration, but avoiding that at all costs is robbing us of an experience of life.
Yes.
And I find that like, that's anyways, I have a very beautiful relationship with death. I always have. And by beautiful, it was very difficult. I lost my mom when I was a teenager. I lost one of my best friends when I was 13 years old. There were plenty of other experiences that came through my life that led me to death predictions and doing this work and all of that stuff. And every time I decided to lean closer into death, like lean into that concept, have those conversations, celebrate life the way I chose to, or I felt this person really wanted it done, I felt like there was so much magic. There was so much opportunity. There was like some of the juiciest, yummiest conversations of my life were around that.
I love that. And that's so beautiful because it's a topic that so many people try to avoid. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I love that you host a room on Clubhouse that revolves around this, because it gives everyone not just an excuse to have the conversation, but a way to listen to the conversation where we can all learn from each other, where we can have an open, honest conversation about it, even if our views on the topic differ a little bit, and we can still love and respect each other about it.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's what I love about Clubhouse, and I love about conversations. I love it when someone has a different opinion than me because I'm either learning something new, stretching my opinion, or strengthening what I believe in.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? And it's a beautiful exercise. So people are like, oh, I hate it. They don't listen to it. But like, why not come together? This is how we're going to find the new earth. This is how we're going to find this new world that we're going to get along in. And even if we don't get along in it, it's fine. As long as we're willing to experience something different than what we have. Because that's how we're going to know our truth, the truth, whatever we want to call it. And I love this topic. It's called Life, Love, Loss, the conversation, the Clubhouse room that I host on Thursday night with 3 other beautiful ladies from around the world, which is so much fun. And basically what I love is I love all of the controversial conversations around death. Like, we were having a little like meeting after one of our rooms, and we were like, let's eventually have the topic of humor and death. How does humor play in grief or in death? Yeah. And I'm like, I have the most hilarious stories around death ever. And I'm like, why be, and it allows us to not be so afraid of the topic. When we can giggle about things, it lightens the load. I know, thank God for humor, because that allowed me to move through my grief with my mom so much easier. Like, oh my God, the amount of jokes I would make and people would get so uncomfortable. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is making you uncomfortable, but it's just making me too happy.
Right. The
way my grandmother passed in the middle of the Middle East, and I was stuck there in the middle of the night, and the funniest things just kept happening after. And I was like, there's no way a woman with her wit and sense of humor didn't plan this before she left. Like, it was, Crystal, hilarious. And I was like, oh my God, like, am I a wrong person to laugh hysterically? And I literally could feel it in my heart where she's like, are you kidding? Laugh. Like, everyone else can cry. And I'm like, okay.
Well, and I think that's so important because especially here in North America, death has become this somber, respectful, I say in quotes, and nobody can see me doing it. It has become this like, you have to be prim and proper thing. And my grandpa was Irish, and I've always loved the idea of an Irish wake because it was a celebration of that person's life rather than this mournful sort of proper experience. And I think that's what death needs to be personally for me. It
Yeah.
needs to be people laughing about the experiences we had
Yes.
together, remembering the life that we had, giggling that, that one time we did that silly thing. And if social media had existed back then, right? Like those stories are so important for people to live on moving forward.
Oh my God. Agreed. It's so funny. Every time I'm enjoying my favorite meal or like my favorite drink or whatever, I always tell my friends, I'm like, okay, when I die, this is what you guys are all serving at my funeral, and I'm just like, I love it. Like, I want it to be a huge party. I want it to be the biggest party of my life, literally.
Yes. Sure. Yes, exactly.
I won't physically be there, but I'll be there, But yeah,
Exactly.
I just like, why not? Like, but I mean, to each their own. Some people would rather, have something quiet and traditional and everything, and honor your own flavor to this, like this is yours and no one else should be able to take away from it. Yes, you won't technically be here. Some people have celebrations life before they pass to be able to enjoy those things. So yeah, it is a really juicy conversation. And I feel like there's so many conversations that we're so afraid to have. And I'm like, there's so much magic there.
Yes. And so much personal growth because as you said, whether you're learning something or strengthening your own opinion or changing your mind, growth happens in those spaces.
Oh my God. Yes.
So if you're never willing to have a conversation with someone that challenges your idea, is it really your idea to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. And I've been staying away from this topic for a while now. Basically what's been happening in the Middle East has been very, very intense. And, my dad is basically, I'm half Lebanese, so half a Southern Lebanese with a lot of Palestinian cousins and friends. And, I grew up with a lot of Jewish friends and they're still very, very close to my heart. They're still a big part of my life. And so many of my Jewish friends are like, oh my God, you're like my only Lebanese friend. And so many of my Lebanese cousins are like, oh my God, you have so many Jewish friends. And I'm like, yeah, because I can see and learn and expand from that place.
Right.
By being around my family and hearing about the stories and the history, by being around my Jewish friends and learning about their life and their traditions and how they see the things. And it's very controversial what's happening. Yet I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I've been blessed to be exposed to both sides of this argument. And I'm like, you know what? I think these are the places where we get to learn. Those people that tend to have, let's just say you're from a certain country or a religious background or an ethnic background that doesn't get along with another, I really highly suggest you expose yourself in some way through either traveling, visiting an event, learning on YouTube, having a conversation from that tribe, all of these things, because then you allow yourself to learn something, to expand what you think or to strengthen your beliefs. And at the same time, you get to realize that we're all human beings.
Yes.
Like, I always make this little cute analogy of these aliens. They're up in their spaceship and they look down the earth and they're like, oh, wow, they're still arguing. It's really funny. They're all the same person. And I'm like, oh my God, like, come on, and it's okay. I think the arguing, like there's a place and a reason for this arguing. Like it's not here for nothing. Let's be honest. But it's like honoring that if in the end, the vision is to understand that we are all one. And we are here as a collective working together to be able to bring about a beautiful future and a tomorrow and love and peace, even though it takes time. It's not utopia overnight.
Right.
I think that's going to be probably very important.
Absolutely. And I think especially after the year that the whole collective world has had, for us all to better understand and continue to understand moving forward. Ultimately, we are all humans. It does not matter your political views. It does not matter where you live. This is a human experience. And we very well may be experiencing what has gone on differently, but it's still a human experience at its core.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Crystal, totally agree. That human experience, like we said, like the thing that we're guaranteed to go through is birth and death. Well, every single freaking human is going to go through this. Actually, every being is going to go through this. Every animal, every living cell.
Yeah.
Look, there's some scientist that's like, actually, there is a cell. Look, sorry, but for the sake of this conversation. So just honoring that, like, this is what brings us together is we're here for a short amount of time, whether we're coming back or not, who cares? This is the life that we're in right now. Right. This is the one that matters. And coming together to spread love and spread light is very, very important to us. And I know that's a shared belief between you and I, big time.
Yes, huge. And I think like there is no person, in my opinion, on the face of the planet who would say the world needs less love, right? Like, no, that's the whole point. Yeah. We need more of it. There just needs to be more of it towards each other, towards the planet, towards the animals and people laugh at me because I have posted this on social media a couple of times. I catch spiders in a cup and I take them back outside.
Oh my God. Crystal, seriously?
Yes.
A fellow spider catcher and put outside. I'm telling you, it's crazy. I can't squish him anymore. Like, and it's been years. I have a lot of trouble. Like, I'm like, no, I'm sorry. He has to leave. I don't want him in my bed, like I don't want him in my room, but I'm not, why would I squish him? Like, no,
he has just as right. And this is the thing.
I'm sorry, we're assuming he's a man. Okay.
But right. Could be a she, 100%. Yep. Absolutely. The spider has just as much of a right to be on this planet as I do. And so who am I to sort of make the decision? Well, sorry, you picked the wrong window to crawl in. Like, what if I walk into the wrong house one day? Like, is somebody just going to squish me? Like, that's not okay.
I love this. This is amazing. Okay. So it's rare that I find a fellow spider cupper. I'm just going to call him a spider cupper. I love it. No, I totally agree. I'm like, one day my best friend that lives down the street, I saw me catch a spider and I was like, I'm going to put him outside. And he's like, it's the winter, Dunia. He's going to die regardless. And I was like, well, what do I do? I was like, I'm not going to kill him.
Right.
He's like, so you're going to let him go through a slow and painful death? And I was heartbroken. So I live in an apartment building. So I started putting them in the hallway.
Oh, well, hey, that's better. That's better, I suppose. I never even thought about the snow. So now I'm thinking like we're not in winter right now, but now I'm thinking like, okay, so what am I going to, because I never even thought about the winter and him dying out in the cold. So like,
who knows, maybe he does like, oh man, we already are taking these extra precautions, Look, like
we're doing the best we can in any given moment. Now I'm going to change my plan and like put them in the garage for the winter or something, but we'll figure it out.
That's amazing. Oh my
God. I love it. I knew we were soul sisters.
I knew it. From the minute we met on Clubhouse and then connected on Instagram. I was like, no, there's something here. There's something here.
I absolutely adore you.
Oh, I love you. I love you.
Right back at you. I do want to be respectful of your time. So I want to, because there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are looking to make life changes, who don't really know sort of what it is they're looking for. And because you do Reiki and past life regression and all of this stuff, do you have a suggestion for maybe where people should start if they're curious?
Absolutely. Okay. So first things first, and this I would say is more for my coaching work. This is what I suggest you to do. Take a piece of paper and put certain sections out, like separate it into certain sections. You can hear my explanation, then you'll understand how you want to do it. Write down a list of what you love most, whether it's activities, whether it's places, whether it's things. It could be food, it could be music, it could be anything. And you could literally write it all over a sheet because it might be long. Okay. On another section, I want you to write everything you're good at, everything that comes like oddly, like easily, like you're like, oh, I really like to communicate, or I really like drawing, or I really like this or that. It can be anything. Okay. Literally, like it could make no sense on paper and I want you to write it down. Then I want you to write everything that you would want, your dream life. And I want you to think as big as you want. I don't want you to be afraid of this. And you have to truly believe that someone like you is possible of having this, and believe in your heart and trust that you may not fully believe that yet. And it may come also. I want you to write that down. Then basically, I want you to start making connections between those categories. We live in a time where we can create our own career more than ever before.
Yes.
Literally anything is possible. You could jar fresh air and sell it on Amazon. Like, it's insane. Okay.
It's true.
So, and people can sell themselves as personalities on podcasts. People can have their own YouTube show. People can create art on Etsy. You can do literally anything, but you have to start thinking, like, picture this. There's 50 people in the room. It's pitch black in the room. There's one light switch and one person's crazy enough to have their hands all over the wall saying, I'm going to find it.
Right.
You need to become that person. You need to say, I'm going to figure this out. I may not have all the answers today, but I'm going to figure this out. And you've got to tell yourself this as many times as possible. Eventually, what I want you to do is keep looking at this list and keep adding to it, keep working it, keep reading it. You're going to keep replanting in your subconscious mind that there's something here that can be done. There's some new step of life that integrates all of these things, what you're amazing at, what you love most, and what you want. And honoring that you're going to find that perfect little sweet spot. It is there. So the more you look at it, the more you plug it in your subconscious, that what happens is every single action, decision, and thought is going to start to line up with that. So literally you're going to find yourself getting closer and closer to that space. People are going to start to show up in your life, literally, that either have something to do with this grand vision or one of these pieces, and it's going to blow your mind. And you have to trust the journey. And I'm warning you right now, when you start this, when you plant that intention and that key, magic happens. And it's incredible. It's actually, like, sometimes unbelievable.
I love that. And such a good tangible steps for people to follow, because you're 100% right. When you set the intention, even if you're not entirely sure of it, your life literally changes. I sat down at the end of last year and decided one-to-one coaching wasn't really 100% where my heart was anymore, because it had been like a really long year and a hard year and a stressful year. I didn't know what sort of the other side looked like. And then January came and Clubhouse was here, and I started connecting with all these amazing people. And I suddenly knew, like, this is what my life needs to be, is these conversations, sharing this with the world, helping other people's voices be heard. And it's like, the more I do it, the more people are just lined up, knocking at the door.
Yeah, exactly. And how could you doubt?
Right.
When life starts to get that obvious, you're like, oh my God, you're going to have your moments where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Of course, this is the human experience. This is part of the fun, unfortunately. But when your heart says, oh my God, I love this, keep doing this, because there's going to be more to love that's coming.
Yes. Oh God, I love that. That's a sound bite right there. I love it. Love it. Okay. I want to be super respectful of your time. And I know for those listening to Clubhouse, because I've talked about it before, we have an intention room in like a half an hour. So I've tried to be really intentional about trying not to miss any of those for this 30-day challenge that we're doing, especially. But I struggle right now because there are so many great conversations happening in our community. And I feel like I want to take part in all of them.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good exercise. Actually, that's a good lesson for the people that are listening too, is when you start to be in this space of like fluidity and excitement and everything, there's opportunities everywhere. It's literally bouncing and off the walls. So honoring that, then you have to kind of put a little bit of a filter. Okay, what do I need and want right here, right now? Right. And if that's two different things, can I split up my time, or can I decipher which one calls my name stronger than the other? And that's going to be really, really important, because as soon as we start to get excited, it's like everything looks appealing. Yes. And choosing, sometimes it's like, I always say, you can have it all. You just can't have it right now. Sometimes you're going to have some things earlier or later, or be more patient, or split it up, or, having everything in this exact moment's not always that easy. Energetically, yes. Physically, not quite.
Right.
Just want to honor that. So yeah, I hear you, Crystal. It's an exercise. And balancing a human life and Clubhouse already is something.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And it's such a weird thing, because I find myself even in, like, I went to Costco the other day and it was our morning intention time. And so like Costco was listening to intentions from my purse, right? Like, and it was just like, I need to be present in this. Right? Like people thought I had lost my mind, I'm sure, because I had forgot my earbuds at home. So it was actually playing out loud. But like, I think in that moment, I really needed the love from the room and I
Yes.
needed to be a part of the
And I think
love.
Costco needed love too, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
To be honest, honestly, because can you imagine someone's grabbing a jar of pickles at Costco and they're listening to someone shed the most sacred and intimate part of like the transformational journey that they're on
Yeah.
at 9 o'clock in the morning? Like, sign me up for that kind of magic. Like,
Right?
that woman grabbing the pickles was probably like, my life is forever changed.
Yes. I love that. I love that. I love that. Oh, yes. Okay. So typically I end the podcast by asking a few questions of each of my guests. Are you game?
I'm game always.
Woohoo. Okay. What's the best or the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. So, best piece of advice, the secret to success is adaptability. That was my mom.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. So good. Worst piece of advice, don't worry, it gets harder. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that was while my mom was sick. And I was like, all right, me and this person are going to have a few conversations after this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Which is so not my character. Like, I'm like, as you can see, like my cheeks are glued with a huge smile. Even in the worst of times, I can find something to giggle at, something to be happy about, something to be grateful for. When I complain hard, but not long. And then I'm like, I'm an Aries. I move very quickly through my emotions, you know?
I love it. I don't love the piece of advice, but I love how you handled it because I can honestly tell you in that moment, I probably wouldn't have handled it with so much grace and dignity. So
too funny.
Yeah, that's one thing that I have learned about myself in the last few years is a lot of times I have to remind myself in the moment, have grace and dignity because perhaps the person on the other side doesn't mean it the way you're taking it.
Yes.
Right.
Very true.
So you just kind of have to like take a deep breath, find a way through it. And then, when you're comfortable and in a better place, then have a conversation about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, mm-hmm. And yeah. If they're willing to give advice like that, like you can imagine they're not in the greatest of places. So that's okay.
Exactly. Okay. Question 2. If you could go back and give yourself any piece of advice at any point in your life, what would it be?
Oh my God. Oh, I love this question so much. Okay. So, one would be, you already know everything you need. Yeah. And everything you love most is actually what you're meant to do.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. Had I
Can
known
you imagine?
oh my God. Had I known that at the age of 8, I would have an incredible career. I would be like, I know what I know now, and I would have 25 years of like brilliant,
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay. Next question. What's one thing about yourself that you want to work on?
Oh, there's a few things. So one thing is my financial literacy, just because I've been in the spiritual and personal growth world so long. I'm not really a numbers girl. I haven't been. And I know it's a language that if I got more into, I would love. So, and now it's getting quite complex with all the investing, the NFTs, all the stuff that's happening. So like, that's kind of the 3D stuff. And the second piece is patience. And I feel like I am in some ways like patient, like a monk. And in some ways I'm like, where is it now? No. Yes. And the last piece is surrender, way more surrender. I'm someone that I'm still a little bit too in my masculine, and I'm still like, and fully letting go, like completely entrusting is an exercise.
Sure. And it's on any given day, a very difficult one, depending on circumstances. So that's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And such a great thing for people to be reminded of, because I think a lot of times we fight the surrender with so much force that we cause ourselves more pain.
Oh my God. And then once we're done, we're like, why didn't I let go sooner?
Right.
Like, why didn't I just like drop the weapons, like,
yes.
And it doesn't, and I'm not saying weapons towards someone else. Like, it's like that armor, like towards life, right? Just let it, put it down. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And even if you're not fine, you're going to be fine.
Well, and it's such a weird thing because I feel like we as a society of human beings have been fighting a battle since the day we ended up on this earth. And it's almost like we're not willing to give up the battle. Like if it's not one battle, it has to be another. Like first it was a battle to survive. Well, we don't really need that part of it anymore. Like we've all pretty much got houses and food, and sure, there are parts of the world that, are still working on things, but like for the most part, as a race, we're absolutely surviving.
Yeah.
But since we don't have that fight anymore, we're like initiating other fights. And it's like,
Totally.
at what point do we sort of just say like, deep breath here?
Yes.
It's going to be okay.
Yes. I find it's because people are married to trauma. Trauma gives them identity. Something to fight for gives them a reason to be here. And they don't realize that building, creating, loving, spreading, doing things is also a reason to be here.
Yes.
You don't have to fight to be here.
That's so huge.
Yeah.
Because yes, like, oh God, yes. For anyone listening to this podcast, please rewind and listen again, because you do not have to fight to be here. You have a right to be here. In this moment. You are meant to be here. It is your responsibility to figure out why and what your journey is. Yes. But like, it does not have to be a struggle.
Exactly. That's a choice. That is a choice.
Huge, huge. Okay. Final question. What does happiness mean to you?
A state that is constantly transforming of ultimate bliss. And the reason why I'm saying this is because what happiness was yesterday is not what happiness is today, is not what happiness is tomorrow to me. But it's getting to that space of bliss using various ingredients of the day.
Oh, I love that. Various ingredients of the day. Oh my God. Yes. I love that.
Because oftentimes we try and use the same algorithm over and over again for our happiness, but we're changing, the world's changing, life's changing so quickly that can you be, adaptable in your approach to happiness and to your approach to it?
That's so huge, because you're absolutely right. We, especially now, live in a world that is changing so quickly. It's hard. Sometimes your head is spinning because you can't keep up with it all. Yeah. So if you're not willing to change what your idea of it is, which is one of the reasons why I love asking this question, because everyone has a different answer. Most people think differently at any given time in their life based on the experience they're going through. And I think it's such a great lesson and such a great reminder for everyone who listens that, today it's one thing, maybe tomorrow it's another because of a different experience that I've had. And I have to be open to the idea that for me, there's never going to be a solid answer. It's going to always evolve.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. That shape-shifting energy, when you start to get comfortable with that, life gets far more fluid and way more exciting.
Oh, I love that. Oh, talking to you has been, oh my God. I feel like I could spend all day here just talking to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like when we meet, it's going to be like physically, it's going to be incredible.
Oh, agreed. And I cannot wait. I don't know if I mentioned this the other day in one of our rooms or not, but I finally was able to book my first vaccine. And like, I honestly, Dunia, I have been like so torn over the last year of like, would I get it right away? What would I do? Whatever. But like when I finally got it booked, I cried.
Oh yeah. Like, then that's when you listened to yourself and your heart.
There was just such a huge release of, even if it means life doesn't change right away, I know I'm going to get back to being able to hug people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I'm a hugger.
Huge hugger. Yeah. Like I've only seen my dad once in the last 15 months, because he lives about 4 hours away from me.
Okay.
And he's older. So there's a risk, right? Like, I don't want to make him sick. We have FaceTimed every week.
Oh.
We talk on text message constantly. And we weren't close when I was growing up. It's just been in the last 5 years or so that we've built a relationship, really. But I'm a huge hugger. And so that one time that I saw him, I said, "Are you comfortable?" And he said, "Are you freaking kidding me? Give me a hug." And I literally broke down, Dunia, because we've never really had a super close relationship.
Oh my God.
But we both just needed that moment of physical touch to remind each other that we were loved, right?
Yes.
And we're all missing that so much right now. Like, sure, like if you're hanging out with your best friend, you're hugging because you guys are hanging out in general. But like having to stand 6 feet away from someone who you love and care about and can't touch.
Brutal. Yeah. Brutal.
Yes. Yeah. So when we meet in person, it is going to be the most
a big
awkwardly long.
Yeah.
unintentionally awkward, but lovely hug in the whole wide world. I
And
cannot
then
wait.
sign me up.
100%. 100%. I know you are going to be going on an adventure
I
in the
am.
next little while. I'm not going to get into too many details because I don't want to spoil all your fun, but what is the most exciting thing you're looking forward to in the next couple of months at this point?
Oh my God. Well, I leave on Wednesday, which I think is insanity, but it's okay. That's how we do things in the Dunia Darwiche world. What am I most, I haven't traveled alone in a couple of years, so I'm excited to do that again. I'm excited to, a friend, so funny. She's like, it's like an eat, pray, love adventure. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I'm in. And I'm like, ready to meet some of our clubhouse family in person, which is going to be mind blowing.
Yeah.
I'm so excited, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to find, like, I know myself well, but I want to find myself again. And
Oh,
this, oh yeah, it's going to be one of those. I think it's going to be a transformative moment, really. The
I
last
love
time I
that.
was traveling alone, I was backpacking the islands in Hawaii solo, and it was unreal. So it's kind of funny to be doing the States again, but I'm going to be traveling all throughout the States. I'm now doing all the southern states. And then I think I may do, so I'm doing the West Coast also, and I may do the East Coast on the way home. Who knows?
Big journey.
Big, big journey. Yeah.
Oh, I am so excited for you. I cannot wait to hear about it. I cannot wait to
Oh,
talk about it. When you come back from it, come back on the podcast. I would love to talk
oh
about how it
yes.
has transformed you, what you learned, all of that fun stuff. Because I think right now, especially for people who maybe aren't necessarily ready for adventures themselves, hearing
Yeah.
about other people's
They
adventures and
can live
how it has,
vicariously through.
yes, absolutely. And just the ability to grow through other people's stories, I think is so unbelievably important.
Yes, agreed. I think that's why people read biographies, right?
Yes.
They could live through someone's adventure and learn the life lessons without actually having to go through all of it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh God, I love you so much,
Oh,
darling.
I love you.
Thank
Oh,
you
Crystal, this
so
is so
much.
fun.
Oh, I'm glad you had fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you. I cannot tell you how much I love and adore you, and I'm so excited for what life holds for you.
Oh, I'm so, so, so excited for it all. And I'm excited to meet. It's gonna happen once I'm back from my adventure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dunia, for being here. Thank you to everyone for listening. I love you all. I appreciate that you come back week after week to listen to the podcast. And I will put all of Dunia's information in the show notes so that you guys can follow her and follow along with the journey. And I promise I will bring her back so that you can hear from her again. Have a wonderful week, everyone.